One of my favorite phrases from time with Google was, is it important because it's measured or measured because it's important? I think there
Mm,
needs to be a lot when it comes to what data we look at and what data and things we need to optimize to improve the data that's either coming in as an input or the data that's going out as an output.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show. Scaling a business is one thing, but scaling a brand with a soul, that's the hard part. How do you grow without losing the magic that made you special in the first place? My guest today, Leigh Feldman, is a master brand builder who's tackled this challenge from every possible angle. He cut his teeth in the agency world, shaping the stories for some of the most iconic brands on the planet, including Google, Nike, Disney, and Red Bull. But Leigh didn't stay on the sidelines. He jumped into the arena, moving from a CMO to CEO of multiple fast-growing franchise companies. Today, he's the CEO of Youth Franchise Brands, where he's scaling concepts like Young Chefs Academy and Flower Power Cooking Studios. Oh, and along the way, he was the official tour DJ for the Jonas Brothers. If you want to understand how to build a brand that can scale and a business that can last, you're going to want to take notes today. Leigh, welcome to the show.
I cannot thank you enough for that introduction. That was beyond kind. I also want to thank you for having me, but the introduction piece, I cannot wait to edit that snippet and send it to my mother and say, see, I don't need to be a doctor. You can be proud of me. I really can't thank you enough for those kind words. And again, for having me as a guest, because you have had some amazing guests. And I quickly want to plug your show to any listeners that are listening, because I'm sending out this link and they're doing me a favor and going, yeah, I'm willing to listen to him talk for a little bit more. I'll listen to this episode. They should listen to the other ones you have. There are some great gems in there. So thank you again for having me and for the warm introduction.
Thank you so much, Leigh. Now it's time to ask you some questions for the audience here. So you built brands for giants like Google and Nike, and now you scale franchise systems. The challenge in franchising is getting hundreds of independent owners to perfectly execute the brand's vibe. How do you scale that intangible cool factor across a franchise system without it getting diluted or lost in translation?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. And first, I do need to obviously put a giant asterisk next to that I worked on programs for those companies. I by no means was the person behind that.
Fair enough.
Obviously, large teams. I just want to make sure that, that is clear. I'm by no means taking credit. Google, Nike, all these places, Disney, they certainly existed before I was there.
Right.
But when it comes to franchising, I obviously think it's important to look at two things when you're talking about scaling. The first being, does it make sense in your market? Franchising is often known as the industry where things are built to spec. And there are certainly some verticals where that makes sense. If you are McDonald's, you want your French fries in Bloomington, Indiana to be the same as Jakarta. You want to know that that experience is taking place. But for brands like the ones that I represent, there needs to be something that is about the individual and about the individual market. So the first thing I always ask is,
Sorry,
does
when you
this
say
make sense?
individual, you mean the individual customer themselves?
Yeah, the customer, the franchisee, what we are doing as the franchisor in that market, and what makes sense in the market for some might not make sense for others. There's certain things that come into play, certainly for seasonality, socioeconomic factors, who you have as a client base that you can pull or are unable to tap into. And so it's really important for a franchisor to work with franchisees and the customers of that franchise location to make sure it makes sense in the marketplace. And
Interesting.
then the second is always the timeline in the pipeline. How long a business has been part of the franchise system certainly can impact what they do or do not do. For a location that is just opening their doors, their go-to-market strategy and the things that they do for an acquisition play are going to be very different for any of our locations that have been in the system for 5 years plus, a decade plus, or in our case for Young Chefs Academy, a location that's getting ready to celebrate 20 years of working with us. So I
Wow.
think those two things, when you talk about the scaling, what makes sense in the market and your timeline in the pipeline, really allow you to treat the businesses as individual businesses so you can maintain that factor of sort of the cool that you touched on without disrupting or changing their culture and their location or the entire culture of this system.
So you're really paying attention to the individual needs of the franchisors or franchisees rather, while at the same time trying to roll out something from a consistent basis. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's all about testing what makes sense. I'm big on what are the inputs, what are the outputs. One of my favorite phrases from time with Google was, is it important because it's measured or measured because it's important? I think there
Mm,
needs to be a lot when it comes to what data we look at and what data and things we need to optimize to improve the data that's either coming in as an input or the data that's going out as an output. And so, yes, treating everybody as an individual is so important in this business. As a franchise system, it is all about the individual. And related to your topic of growth, scaling, success, you still can't forget the individual. And so you need to work with them through some touch point, whether that's a franchise business coach or franchise support system or regional calls or an advisory council to make sure that they have a voice in the system and are aware of the things going on because it's the individuals that make up the system. Do I expect all of my team members to have conversations with every single person? Would love if that could happen.
right.
I would love for that to be the ability, but I know that might not be realistic if you're in a system that has 100 plus locations. And so it's still important to have a touch point with those people.
No, thank you, thank you. And I really like that phrase, giving the customer a voice, because what I heard is that means we on the other side have an opportunity to listen. That
Absolutely. They are our front lines. They are going to always know more about what is happening in their location than we will. The
fantastic.
data, the numbers will paint a picture for us to believe we understand. But unless we are doing site visits and site audits and sitting there with them alongside them, we will never know as much as them. And that's the phrase you will always hear from franchisees. You don't understand my market.
Ah,
That's probably true, but it's our point and purpose to try to understand it as best as possible so that we can make decisions together and make sure they have a voice in the matter and things that impact them as we make changes and roll out things as a system.
brilliant, brilliant. So, Lee, you made the leap from a CMO to a CEO. And so you see the business from a totally different perspective than many CEOs who were not in that role before. What is the biggest blind spot that a non-marketing CEO has in your opinion? What fundamental truth about brand and growth are they consistently failing to grasp?
Yeah, I think it boils down to a few things. I think a lot of marketing is sadly done for other marketers. It is just seen by other marketing teams, and there are awards, there's recognition, there are things that make them say, see, this was a success. And the other piece related to that is really return on investment, return on ad spend. The things that we invest in as a platform, as the franchisor for our franchise system, are things that are all related to client acquisition. Even if they are under the auspices of brand building or PR or larger campaigns, it all needs to relate to how did this improve client acquisition? The thing that I believe as the franchisor, and a phrase that you will hear us say often is, how can we act as your aspirin? And when you talk to a lot of franchisees about what's your headache, it's how do I get more people into my location? And so we are big on investing in things that impact the acquisition of clients to the door so that they can focus on the experience. I think that is the job of the franchisee is to provide a remarkable experience. And I say remarkable very specifically because I mean that in the truest sense of the word. If they can provide an experience where people leave and say, I need to tell other people about
Right.
this was fantastic. This was magical. I need to refer them to go here. Then they've done their job. And if I, as the franchisor, can do my job of getting more people to be aware of the business and try out the business, and I have data to really measure and track what is the return, what is the performance, what are we seeing from that on the acquisition standpoint, then we're doing our jobs together. And so a big part of it is really measuring what is the return from the ad spend or return on investment as far as real dollars, real revenue, and from that for the franchisees, actual profitability.
And how do you make the franchisees or help the franchisees make the decision about where to invest in bringing in that next customer? Because they have a lot of choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's market dependent. Same thing. What makes sense in one market might not make sense in another. In some areas where we see real great success with QR codes on yard signs or lawn signs that could be placed at freeway exits, if you're in Boulder County or Harris County, that is a no no. You are not putting signage up. And so, some of the things we've done for previous brands like Gorilla Stunts, where on April Fools, we'd put fake parking tickets for first trial offers for first time clients to come into our businesses. Again, you can't do that in certain markets or in certain places, they wouldn't even think that was funny. So again, you need to make sure it makes sense in the market, but you also need to understand what the investment is and tracking the return. Is it a financial impact or is it a non-financial impact? A lot of times franchisees are interested in what I would call vanity metrics. How many followers do I have? How many newsletter subscribers do I have? Those are great things to track and measure, but how are they translating into purchases? How are they translating into dollars that are coming into your location? So, a lot of what we do to help guide those decisions is simply laying out the numbers. On this platform, you're spending X and you're seeing Y as a return. On this one, you're spending X and seeing Y as a return. What is the long term value? What's the immediate value? What are the margins on these? What's the stickiness factor? And letting them come to that decision themselves. They want to be business people. That is why they are investing in themselves to be franchise owners.
Right,
And it's
right.
our job to either push, pull, or lead them to what might be the best solution for their problem or their situation that we can come to together. And so a lot of times it's really just laying out the numbers and letting them see that and say, I think this is what is the best decision.
So you're giving them optionality, you're educating them, you're enabling them to be empowered to make the right decision for their own business.
Absolutely. And we can bring all of those case studies, all of those white papers to the network. And again, remind them that what makes sense in one market might not make sense in another. And depending upon your timeline in the pipeline, this may or may not make sense for you.
Right.
If you are a Young Chefs Academy and you know that every summer your utilization percentage is 95 to 100%, you are booked. And that is not a problem because you've been in the system for a long time. That's a very different conversation we're going to have with you about spending for promotion of summer camp versus a new location or a location that's at an 80% utilization percentage. And so that's where we lay out those numbers and talk about what business decisions do you want to make that ultimately will have the best impact for your business in your market and for how long you've been part of the Young Chefs or Flower Power system.
So this is wonderful, and I see how you're really really focused on the needs of the franchisees. Where can that break down? When does communication and trust break down between the corporate team and franchisees? Now let's accept or move off my question, the customization or letting them or
Yeah.
customizing to each market because you've talked quite a bit about that. I'm looking for maybe the next layer down. How can companies or CEOs help franchisees be more effective through the communication to the franchisees?
Yeah. And I love that because that is something we see all the time. There is often a breakdown in communication. And when that happens, we use a specific framework and we immediately say, stop. What is the miscommunication? And STOP is an acronym: situation, target, opportunity, proposal. And we immediately say, with franchise business coaches, VP of business operations, our COO, our VP of sales and marketing, what is the situation? And you will often find that with one, two, or three parties, they see the situation as different.
Mm.
Maybe they do agree on the situation and they see it as a different target. Oh, we're not actually targeting kids. We're targeting the parents of kids. We're targeting corporate event leaders and people that book offsite retreats. We're targeting adults for workshops or parent night outs. And maybe they disagree on the target, or maybe they agree on the situation and the target, and they differ on the opportunity and they differ on the proposal. And so we use that framework of STOP: situation, target, opportunity, proposal, for any time that we find a breakdown of communication. And that's why franchisees will laugh anytime we go, whoa, 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 stop, because we truly mean let's go through the exercise of stop together.
Wow, that's very powerful. That's very powerful. And I love the idea that of it really means we have to be listening better.
Yeah, we need to make sure we're on the same page if we need to move forward with any suggestions.
That's right. So let's talk about you for a moment. So you've
Oh,
come
okay.
the relentless pace of agency life to strategic planning with Google, and now to the ultimate responsibility of being a multi-brand CEO. So that's a personal evolution, and a lot of CEOs need to go through a personal evolution in order to scale. I often say, in order to scale a company, the CEO needs to scale themselves. So, how did you go through the scaling of yourself to transition from being a world class marketer to the leader responsible for the entire P&L?
Yeah, I think everyone should have, whether it's a coach, a mentor, a mastermind group, a soundboard, or people that they can just talk to about the things that they are going through and experiencing just to get more advice. I think it's incredibly valuable to look to other coaches podcasts, interviews, books, things that have sort of laid the blueprint, laid the foundational groundwork. So you can follow that model and follow that system to say, if I want to be here, whatever that is, as your exit or ending point, what steps do I need to go working backwards to get there? And there are a lot of companies and a lot of businesses that most likely have already gone through that experience. And you can learn from their experiences to say, I need to do the same things. I need to do some of these things, but do them differently. Or I need to do none of this and I'm going to forge my own path. And that's where having those mentors, those leaders, those coaches, those soundboards can certainly assist you. I think on the personal side, it's really important for people to take a look and say, is this an opportunity where I'm earning or is this an opportunity where I'm just learning? Ideally, you're doing both, especially if you're at the executive level. You should be compensated well, but you should be learning new things, not just bringing all the knowledge and education you have. You should be learning something new. And I think you have to really decide if you need to jump ship and take on new opportunities based on where you are in your life. And if you have the opportunity to be just focused on earning or focused on learning or focused on both. Again, ideally, if you are fulfilled and satisfied with your career, both of those should come into play and you feel good about what you're receiving from your place of employment.
Very powerful. And when I talk to CEOs about this journey that they're going through, one is to double down on what you just said. They need to be open to learning. They need to be a curious person who recognizes that there are a lot of things they may not know. In fact, many CEOs have said to me, Glenn, I don't even know what I don't know. And that's what scares me the most. But the second part you already mentioned, and I want to emphasize, is you need to be coachable. So if you're in a group or you're with a coach or you're with a friend, somebody who can provide you with valuable information, you need to be open to trying something you haven't tried before. One of the things I'll often say to CEOs is when we're working together is if you're not uncomfortable with some of the things I'm asking you to do, then you're not learning. We need to push the envelope here for you to actually grow into a bigger, better, more effective CEO.
Oh, I love that. And I also love the touching on the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns because that's really part of the job is learning together. And that's also what I love about the franchisor franchisee relationship, especially in new and emerging markets. There are always lessons to be learned.
Fantastic. What a great attitude. Now we're on to our last question or set of questions here around what everyone knows is my favorite topic, which is AI. So your entire world has been brand communication and AI is now writing copy and making images and running ad campaigns. And so how does this change the way you think about scaling a brand's authentic story and its human connection with customers when we know we're going to be inserting AI into a lot of what we're doing here?
Oh, so much is being built for now, as people are calling it, GEO opposed to SEO,
Yes,
the
yes.
generative engine optimization. I just saw a report recently about click traffic through full purchase activity and event firing for Target, and how a majority of their traffic is now actually coming from ChatGPT, and
Hmm.
how much traffic in the last quarter and last month is down from Google. And I believe that that GEO piece is going to be even more important as you want to tell that story, but also leading people, aiding discovery to discover your story, to hear your story, to learn about your story. And I think that's why things like this are so valuable because as you can pull information, tidbits, news, sources, announcements, things that will be crawled and indexed, you can have more on display to have people discover you. And so a lot of that when it comes to the brand and the story is preparing for really how AI might possibly evolve and change the landscape, even from as we know it now to where it might be in 2 or 3 years. I wish I was a futurist and could tell you this is where we'll be, this is where we need to double down. But I think a lot of our purposes when it comes to AI is obviously streamlining the work that we do so that we can scale in the parts that bring a return even faster. And so a lot of that, as you see, for blog content creation, video content creation, newsletter copy, social copy, there's a lot of value in that. But the piece is the creative thought and the creative thought that still matters in creating the prompts, creating the scripts, so that you can create something that is still on brand, still authentic, still feels humanized, that you can then publish and deploy to your system. And so a lot of that as we prepare is to still keep our authentic brand voice, but also have more content be created in that voice, leveraging the tools that AI has produced for us.
That's great. And I've heard CEOs teach AI what the brand voice is. This is our brand voice. Go look at all of our old copy and help us understand how we can create literal prompts that incorporate our brand voice so that when we're using AI as a tool to create new content, whatever kind it is, it starts from a place of hopefully following our brand voice. And then we can tweak it as humans to make it even better.
Oh, you nailed it. And I mean, being able to put in the attitude suggestions, the tone, the length of copy, the re-edits between Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot. I mean, there are some amazing tools out there to ideally streamline your operations as a franchise owner and the franchisor. So again, we can really get into the things that we know drive revenue and profitability.
Fantastic. Leigh, this has been amazing. And you challenged me earlier to ensure that I was going to learn something today. And I have. So I appreciate that.
That might need another asterisk. I was just saying how jealous I am that you get to speak to such brilliant people like the guests you've had on, and you get to take away new things and learn things every day. So it's really me that is learning. And I really can't thank you enough because these questions were phenomenal. And they're things that I certainly want to chew on a little bit more after this call. So thank you for challenging me to learn even more, especially on my journey with leadership with Youth Franchise Brands, Young Chefs Academy, and Flower Power Studios.
Leigh, how can people reach you?
Yeah, they can find us online, youngchefsacademy.com, flowerpowerstudios.com, and they can find me on LinkedIn if they'd like to connect directly. That's Leigh, Leigh, Feldman, Feldman, like Corey Feldman. If you are of a certain age and know who that is, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you don't know who that is, maybe you're going to write me about an internship opportunity because I'm assuming you're young. That's fine. You can reach out to me and ask me, who's Corey Feldman and do you have internship opportunities? Because I'm too young to know who that actor is. Either way, hopefully they find us.
I love it. That'll get your attention.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for having me. This truly was excellent.
Thank you, Leigh.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.